capacity of connect, movement with breath and spiritual meaning, yoga is born. Hello everyone, I am Tanuja and today we'll be discussing about the origin and broader concepts of yoga with our speaker Sri Roop, who is extensively interested on psychology and yoga, and he's a qualified person in cognitive behavioral therapy. Please welcome him. Hi, Shriru.
Hello, Namaskara. So before continuing into the session, I would like to do the pranams to our Gurujis who have taught me all the yoga instructor course, that is Dr. Ashoka V. Reddy from Pranava Pratishtana Yoga, and also our Guruji, Dr. H.R. Nagendra, who has been working tirelessly to bring out the best aspects in yoga and to inspire the youth and to bring the concepts of East and the West together. That is, the concept of West is a research orientation, and the concept of East is about darshanas, and also bringing those two together and giving it a scientific outlook and inspiring young students. So he has been doing a great work. So with that, let's go into some basics of yoga, that is origin of yoga. So before going to the origin, I want to tell you a statement said by a person, that is, if you think you're free, you are free. If you think you're bound, you are bound. Basically, you are what you think. So these statements were made by Ashtavakra. Ashtavakra, as the name suggests, Ashtavakra, that means 8 defects. This person had 8 defects in his body. But then also he is considered as a very great yogi. When we see the statement that he has made, so we'll get to know his state of mind and the amount of willpower he had to overcome all those physical disabilities. So now coming to the origin of yoga, around 2300 to 3000 BC, somewhere around that time, people of Indian subcontinent were actually in hunger of knowledge. So they wanted something which they could use it practicably. In search of this knowledge, there emerged many number of people who try to search for this knowledge. So out of these, we have many munis and rishis going into a particular subject and doing some research in those subjects. So in Indian philosophy, we have Shat Darsanas. So we have Nyaya, Vaisheshika, then we have Samkhya, then we have Yoga, Purva Mimamsa, and Uttara Mimamsa. So each one is attributed to a particular sage. So for example, Nyaya is attributed to Gautama Muni, Yoga to Patanjali, then Samkhya to Kapila Muni, and each of the Shastra deals with a particular subject. Like Nyaya deals with logical quest for justice, whereas Samkhya deals with the science of eliminating the pains from physical and mental space. And Uttara Mimamsa or Vedanta, it dealt with philosophies about life, death, and soul. But here, when we compare the two darshanas, that is Yoga Darshana by Patanjali and Samkhya Darshana by Kapila, we find most of the similarities between those two darshanas. So the Yoga Darshana, the crux part, the main part of the Yoga Darshana is derived majorly from Samkhya. And the difference between those two is that Patanjali introduced the concept of Ishvara in this. So Patanjali described who is an Ishvara. He described what constitutes Ishvara. So he described Ishvara as Klesha Karma Vipakashayai Aparam Vrishta Purusha Vishesha Ishvaraha. So that means that Ishvara is an entity which is free from Klesha. Klesha means colorings of the life. Colorings include avidya, asmita, raga, dvesha, abhinivesha. So avidya means ignorance. Asmita means ego. Raga means desire. Dvesha means hatred. Abhinivesha means fear of death. So Ishvara is an entity which is free from all these kleshas. Then Ishvara is also free from karma, sanchita karma, prarabdha karma, and agami karma. And also he is free from the actions or consequences arising out of these karmas. So then he goes on defining Ishvara's characteristics, and he tells Tasya Vachaka Pranavaha. That means Ishvara is identified with this Pranava or the Omkara. So this is the major difference between Samkhya philosophy and Yoga philosophy.
So basically, you're telling Ishvara is like he is not into emotional bonding with anybody.
Yeah, he's
Huh,
not into emotional bonding. He does not face
huh.
the worldly materialistic symptoms that normally humans face.
Okay. So, anybody who follows yoga can be Ishvara. That's what the Patanjali Yoga says.
Uh,
Or how
being
is it?
okay, being Ishvara is different. Trying to attain
Mm-hmm.
that level is very difficult
Mm-hmm.
actually. So first of all, the
Okay.
basic level to start the path towards Ishvara is Samadhi.
Mm-hmm.
So that is the last step
Oh,
of
okay.
Ashtanga Yoga. So Samadhi is the
Uh-huh.
last step of
Uh-huh.
Ashtanga Yoga, then we'll start the path to Ishvara. So becoming Ishvara is
Mm-hmm.
nothing but merging with that infinity.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So while talking about the meaning of yoga, I'm going to explain this. So yoga is derived from the root word that is yuj. That means
Okay.
to connect. So in physical sense, it
Okay.
connects the body and the mind. Then in spiritual
Mm-hmm.
sense, it connects the individual self to the
Mm-hmm.
universal self. That is the Prindanda to the Brahmanda. So here comes the
Mm-hmm.
concept of becoming the Ishvara. That is the Aham Brahmasmi.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay. Okay. Huh.
But it's very difficult. Why? You can just imagine. I told about kleshas. Just imagine the klesha.
Mm-hmm.
Avidya, smita, raga, dvesha, abhinivesha. That means person has to become free from
Mm-hmm.
ignorance, then
Mm-hmm.
desire, then
Mm-hmm.
dread, then fear of.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, all
Mm-hmm.
these things are very very difficult to achieve. So now we have different definitions given to yoga. Patanjali describes it as yoga's chitta vritti nirodha. That means yoga is
Mm-hmm.
one which vanquishes the modifications of the.
Mm-hmm.
Then we have Sri
Mm-hmm.
Krishna defining yoga as
Mm-hmm.
yoga samatvam uchyate. That is equanimity is yoga. Equanimity is balance in thought, word, and deed. Then Sri Krishna gives
Mm-hmm.
another definition for yoga. He tells yoga karmasu kaushalam. That is, it is the mastery or the dexterity in action. So it is the skill in
Mm-hmm.
action. And we have Vasishta Muni. He also gives one more definition.
Mm-hmm.
Yoga mana prashamana upayaha. That means it is a art or the technique to calm down and cool down the mind. So we
Mm-hmm.
might think that each person has given a different definition for yoga, but actually when you see the broader picture, it just focuses on chitta finally. So here
Mm-hmm.
chitta has been described by Swami Vivekananda. Actually, he describes chitta as a
Mm-hmm.
combination of manas, buddhi, and
Mm-hmm.
ahankara. So manas is the mind,
Mm-hmm.
buddhi is the intellect, and ahankara is the ego.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
ego is not the actual concept of ego that we have in this present day world. This ego is the primordial,
Mm-hmm.
which which gives you the feeling that this is you and this is not you. Then we have this
Mm-hmm.
buddhi, that is intellect, and we have mana.
Mm-hmm.
So these three combinations
Mm-hmm.
make the chitta.
Okay.
So now, actually, uh, Swami Vivekananda in his commentary, he has given a beautiful explanation
Mm-hmm.
for this Yoga Chitta Vritti Nirodha. He compares this
Mm-hmm.
chitta to a lake and
Mm-hmm.
vrittis to the ripples on the lake.
Mm-hmm.
So, when there are ripples on the lake, obviously we'll not be able to see the reflection properly. It will not be clear. Correct, right? It will be
Mm-hmm.
translucent.
Correct, correct.
And all the whatever the dust or dust particles are present, it will go on mixing with the water, and it's translucent and we
The
can't see it.
reflection is, yeah, yeah, the reflection is not clear.
So what Patanjali tells is that when these
Mm-hmm.
ripples are calmed down, okay, when these ripples are gone,
Mm-hmm.
all the dust particles and everything settle down. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so similarly, when all these modifications of the minds are gone, then you
Mm-hmm.
are able to see yourself who you really are. So
Mm-hmm.
that's why he describes, go on describing, Patanjali goes on describe him. So, and yeah,
Mm-hmm.
one more thing I forgot to mention. Actually, we have to give credit to Patanjali. Why? Because he is a very honest man. Why I'm telling you very honest? While writing the Yoga Darshana, the first sutra he tells is that Atha Yoga Anushasanam. Atha Yoga Anushasanam. That means
Means?
now I am telling about yoga anushasane. That means which already has been existing. I'm not telling something new. It is already existing. I'm telling it now. So this shows
Okay.
that this gives a link between Samkhya and yoga. So that's why Patanjali is a very truthful person. We have to give him credit for that. And the
Okay.
second sutra is Yogaschitta Vritti Nirodha. Then he tells Tada Drashtu Swarupe Avasthanam. That is, when all these modifications are cleared down, you will see who you really are. Then Vritti Sarupyam Itaratra. He goes on describing what are these vrittis or the ripples of the mind that will occur or the modifications of the mind. So he describes Vrittayaha Panchataya Klishta Klishtaha. 5 types of vrittis are there. Some are painful, some are not painful. Okay, so he describes what are the vrittis. Pramana Viparyaya Vikalpaya Nidra Smritayaha. So these are the broad classification of the vrittis. Pramana means right knowledge. Viparyaya means mithya gnana. Okay, that means false
Means?
knowledge. False knowledge. Mithya.
Okay. Uh-huh.
Then vikalpaya.
Okay.
Vikalpaya is something which you imagine. So imagination. Nidra. Nidra is also considered a vritti. And smritayaha, memory. So because of all these things, there will be modifications in the mind. This is what he describes. So he describes pramana. Pratyakshanumana pramanani. That means pratyaksha, seeing with your own eyes. Anumana, that means using your intellect and finding out what is the truth. Agama, reading the correct source and finding about the truth. Pramanani. So by doing all these 3 things, you will get the right knowledge. Then viparyayo mithya gnanam atadrupa pratishtam. That means viparyaya means false knowledge. When this happens, because of mithya gnana, because of false understanding of things, that becomes a vritti, modification in the mind. And then vikalpaya, that is shabda gnananupati vastu shunyo vikalpaha. That means you would have heard something, shabda. Then based on that shabda, you would have formed some gnana, shabda gnana, anupati. That means because of that sound, you have formed this object, but the object does not exist in the real world. Vastu shunya.
Okay.
That means the object is shunya, it does not exist really. So it is your kalpane, and that is a modification of the mind. Then abhava pratyayalambana vrittir nidra. That means he tells that, see, nidra means sleep. Okay, so sleep is not a conscious process. Okay, it's a kind of, see, when you go to sleep, you don't know when, at what time you will go to sleep. Correct, right? You do you
Correct,
remember?
correct.
Yeah, normally you don't remember what you were thinking the moment you felt asleep. Correct, right? And also you won't remember, just when you wake up, you won't remember what you were thinking at that time. How did I wake up? How did I fall asleep? You don't remember anything. So it's not a conscious process. So that's why sleep is also considered as a vritti here. And if we go on to extend this concept on the health, then sleep, we can think of how sleep becomes a vritti or modification. Suppose there is lesser sleep, then that is a vritti. Suppose there is more sleep, more than needed sleep, that is also a vritti. So it basically, less sleep or more sleep, it affects the manomaya kosha, which in turn affects the pranamaya kosha, and which in turn affects the annamaya kosha or physical body. So like this. Then smritayaha. Smriti means memory. Anubhuta Vishaya Sampramosha Smritihi. That means whatever Anubhuta Vishaya. Anubhuta means experienced. Whatever you have experienced, some Vishaya you have experienced, that you have a memory of that. And because of that memory, that is a vritti. Sometimes you would have experienced a very harsh moment. Okay, maybe while being a child or something, some of them might have experienced abuse or something. So that abuse
mm,
sits on the
mm,
manomaya kosha level, and
mm,
it starts becoming a vritti. It starts modifying the
mm,
thinking. So
mm,
what happens is that
mm,
even when they grow up, they will have this insecurity. They start thinking that
mm,
each and every person they see might be an abuser. They don't know.
mm.
They can't trust. They will have trust issues. All these things will come out.
True.
So like
Mm,
this, he goes
mm,
on explaining about the vrittis. Okay.
mm,
Now he tells about how
mm,
the practice of yoga
mm,
should be done. He describes this
mm,
abhyasa vairagya abhyam tannirodha. That means you have to
mm,
do
mm,
constant practice. Abhyasa means practice. Vairagya.
mm,
Vairagya means not having attachment towards the fruits of your action or practice. So if you follow this,
mm, mm,
then tan nirodha. That means all these modifications will go away. But it doesn't go away in
mm,
1 day or 2 day. He mentions how it goes away. So he tells how to practice that. Satudirga kala nairantarya satkara sevito drudabhumihi. So that means you have to practice for a long
mm.
constantly without giving any breaks, with the attitude of serving yourself with great care.
Consistency.
Yeah, consistency, great care. You have to practice it.
Mm,
Then the practice will establish within you. So
mm,
basically,
mm, mm,
talking about
mm,
the controlling of the mind. That's the practice he's talking
mm,
about.
mm.
So he's talking about how to make the modifications of the mind go away.
Okay. Ha.
And yeah, I told this like abhyasa vairagya. This forms
Mm,
the most important basis or principle of yoga.
mm,
So when you compare
mm,
other forms of exercise with yoga, the main difference is this.
mm,
So
mm,
in yoga, we don't have an attachment
mm,
towards the fruits of action. But whereas in other
mm,
exercises, we do the karma for the fruits of action.
mm.
So this is the main difference. So
Okay,
now,
but in the present scenario, every whosoever practices whichever physical fitness, they do expect some result. But then if we go to gym and work out, the result will be shown within lesser period. But yoga takes a gradual result to show.
yeah.
So that
So
it says that it not only cleanses the body, it is cleansing body with the mind. That's why it is a slow process. That's what it is. Am I
see,
correct?
not only that,
Ah.
there is a greater
Hmm.
science to this. The science is that,
Hmm.
see, what
Hmm.
is our human body made up of? It is made up of chemicals. Okay.
Hmm.
So,
Hmm.
whenever you go to a new environment, the body takes
Hmm.
some time to acclimatize. Okay.
Hmm.
So,
Hmm.
if you
Hmm.
go to a colder place or a higher altitude, it takes some time to
Hmm.
acclimatize. So, it doesn't like
Hmm.
this, it doesn't acclimatize like this. Correct, right? It
Hmm.
takes some
Hmm.
time.
Correct.
It has
Correct.
to adjust to the
Hmm.
environment.
Hmm.
It has to adjust all the parameters. Our body is so complex. So it has so much of
Hmm.
complex systems performing. All those complex systems has to adjust to the environment. Now, suddenly,
True.
if you start doing all the exercises, okay, yesterday you were not doing
Hmm.
anything,
Hmm.
today you start doing exercise. How will the body adjust?
Hmm.
Yes, it will start
Ah.
reacting, but we don't want reaction, we
Hmm.
want action.
Hmm.
Yoga
Hmm.
gives
Hmm. Hmm.
action over a long period of time,
Hmm.
but other forms
Hmm.
of exercise gives reaction.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
So it's just a reaction to what you're doing. That's all, nothing else. It's not an action. That is one thing.
Hmm.
And also, as you said,
Hmm.
it deals at a
Hmm.
deep, subtler level of mind.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
So we have something called as Bhiranga Yoga, Antaranga Yoga. So apart
Hmm.
from
Hmm.
physical exercise, which is dealt with Bhiranga Yoga, we have Antaranga Yoga,
Hmm.
wherein we focus
Hmm.
more about the mind, how to
Hmm. Hmm.
concentrate the mind on one object, how to
Hmm.
bring back the mind towards individual parts of the body. So all this comes
Hmm.
under yoga. So it's a very
Hmm.
long process. Yoga is not just an exercise, it's a kind of lifestyle
Hmm.
we have to adopt.
Hmm. Hmm.
So, now coming to the concept of health in yoga. So, we know that we have this
Hmm.
WHO definition, which defines health
Hmm.
as a state of well
Hmm.
being in physical, mental, and social spheres of life, and not just a mere absence of disease. Okay. And we have in Ayurveda. Ayurveda defines health in a more comprehensive way. It tells that sama dosha, then sama agni, sama dhatu, then malakriyaha, prasanna atma indriya manaha. That is defined as happiness in Ayurveda. So sama dosha, sama agni, sama dhatu means a balanced dosha. Dosha means vata, pitta, kapha. So all these three things, it is balanced. It is called as sama dosha. Then sama agni, metabolic fire, balancing the metabolic fire. Then sama dhatu, balancing the body tissues, that is the energy consumption of those tissues. And malakriyaha, the waste excretion portion of the body. So all this, then a mind, an intellect, a soul, and the external organs which are contented and satisfied. This is the definition of health according to Ayurveda. Yeah.
See, the point is Ayurveda and yoga goes hand on hand. Maybe because of ancient times, I guess.
Yeah.
But in terms of present scenario, nobody would prefer. I mean, very less people will prefer Ayurvedic medicines.
Yeah.
Everybody goes for West. Even in Western concept, also at the end, they suggest physiotherapy or yogasana to fix their body properly.
Yeah.
How is that?
Actually, what is happening? I told you. See, people want results instantaneously. They don't want to take the path of sadhana. Yoga is a path of sadhana. So, as Patanjali has told, Sato Dirgha Kala Nairantarya Satkara Sevito Druda Bhumihi. So, actually, if you count the number of years that you have to practice, Swami Vivekananda prescribed almost 11 years of constant practice. 11 years minimum, that is. So people don't want to go in this sadhana path. They want instantaneous results. And the thing is that Ayurveda and yoga, so it works very slowly on subtle levels. It doesn't give instantaneous results. Slowly over a period of time, it will start showing results. But people are very impatient. They want instantaneous results. Hence, they go for Western medicine and they try to look for other alternatives, shortcut. They try to look for shortcut simply. And today, with the recognition of International Yoga Day, we are getting a kind of more importance towards yoga and our traditional systems of medicine. So our traditional system of medicine, one of the traditional system of medicine is Ayurveda. We have a ministry in the government of India called Ayush Ministry today. So Ayush is Ayurveda, Yoga, Unani, then Siddha, and homeopathy. So we have a Ayush ministry, and this ministry is actually encouraging the traditional systems of medicine. So it is slowly gaining importance. And also, Westerners are also going for this more number of Ayurvedic treatments, then corrections through yoga. Rather than completely modern medicine, they are actually shifting towards our traditional medicines.
That's a nice thing.
Yeah. Yoga takes this concept of health still more further. So it defines, it has something called as Panchakosha Viveka. So it defines the whole self into 5 koshas. Annamaya kosha, that is the physical body. Then we have Pranamaya kosha, that is the energy field. Then we have Manomaya kosha, that is mind field. Then we have Vijnanamaya kosha, that is the intellectual field. And finally Anandamaya kosha, which is the bliss field. So each one of the field deals with different levels. And also in yoga, they define Vyadhi, that is disease. So Vyadhi is classified into 2 types, Adija Vyadhi, Anadija Vyadhi. And Adija Vyadhi is related to stress or memory oriented disease. Whereas Anadija Vyadhi is non-stress related. So it comes from outside. For Anadija Vyadhi, the examples are infections, toxin. So all these things are Anadija Vyadhi. So for these, medicine lies outside.
Okay.
And for Adija Vyadhi, there are two types again, Sara and Samanya. Sara is congenital defects, that is the defects that manifest while taking birth itself. And Samanya is stress related. That means because of modern day lifestyle. So stress happen in the Manomaya Kosha. So for example, we have today a lot of pressure. Okay, for a change, let's take the example of a housewife. Normally we think that housewives don't do much work. Why do we think that? Because they are not paid. It's not a waged work, that it's unpaid. It's a kind of free service that they do actually, the housework. But it's a lot of effort and energy that we don't recognize it. Correct, right?
Correct.
Yeah. So what happens is that apart from the housework also, sometimes because of this material world, there is a need that both the parents need to work. They want more money so that they can live according to their own lifestyle. Happening while balancing the housework and also the work, actual employed paid work on the other hand, stress is being accumulated in that person, woman. So what will happen? This stress will manifest in the Manomaya Kosha. So it will be in the form of anger, anxiety, or other emotions, negative emotions. So when these negative emotions aggravate themselves, so what will happen is that it will cause an imbalance in the flow of prana, because normally normal people don't concentrate on their breath. Okay, so when there is a disturbance in the mind, there will be irregularity in the flow of breath, and this irregularity in the flow of breath will lead to irregularities in the prana flow, and this prana flow over a long period of time, it is irregular, then it will slowly manifest as a disease in the Annamaya Kosha or physical form.
Okay.
So because of modern lifestyle, because of speed, actually diseases are being manifested in the physical Annamaya Kosha. So this is about Samanya. So yoga can also be used as a therapy. So in therapy, to deal with the imbalances in the Annamaya Kosha, we have diet, asanas, and kriyas. So in diet, we have this Western concept where they take into account the number of calories and the amount of macronutrients and the micronutrients that we consume. So macronutrients are basically fats, carbohydrates, proteins, vitamins, and minerals. And micronutrients are required in very small quantities, but they are very essential, like magnesium, sulfur, sodium, iodine, required in very small quantities. Now, apart from the Western concept of diet, we have something native, that is the gunas. So each and every person is made up of a combination of three gunas, that is the tamasic, the rajasic, and the sattvic. So these gunas in combination form a person altogether. So it basically determines the characteristic of thinking and action of that person, these gunas. So depending upon the guna, the diet is prescribed according to yoga. If a person is in a kind of tamasic state, that is a lethargic state, then he has to be activated. So for that, we for pulling the person into activation or the rajas guna, we feed him some kind of spicy food or some kind of hot food or stimulating food. And if a person is in Rajasic Guna, that is hyperactivity state where the energy spending is more than required, then we have to bring him to Sattvic state. So we start feeding him the Sattvic type of food, like the green leafy vegetables or the food that does not take you either to the extreme, either Rajas or Tamas. And also we have foods which consumed in proper quantity will be Sattvic, such as the ghee. And if it exceeds a certain limit or threshold, then it becomes tamasic in nature. So like this, yoga combines the concept of gunas along with the Western concept for diet. Next is asanas. So asanas is basically, you can compare this to the acupressure technique. So basically in asana, we are actually extending one part and we are compressing the other part. Basically, we are regulating the flow of prana to certain parts of the body. And it acts just like acupressure.
Okay.
So basically, you are regulating the prana, and because of regulation of the prana, your revitalizing that part of the body. So through asanas, corrections can be made. And then we have kriyas like the neti, dauti, basti, kapalabhati, and trataka. Three things, that is the diet, the asanas, and the kriya is used for correction at the annamaya kosha level, that is the physical body level. Then we have manomaya kosha. So manomaya kosha, as I told you, because of this lifestyle, there is a lot of stress accumulation. And for this, in yoga, we have a technique of stimulation and relaxation. Stimulation and relaxation. So basically, what we do is we spend off the extra energy that we have. Each and every thought consumes energy. When we spend all those extra energy by doing asanas, kriyas, then the mind will be left free from those materialistic thoughts for some time at least. Then we have dharana, dhyana, and emotion culture for Manomaya Kosha. So dharana is something where you concentrate on a particular object. Dhyana is something where you defocus it. Okay. And we have emotion culture. For this emotion culture, I would like to tell one small shloka of Bhagavad Gita. So it goes like this. ध्यायतो विषयान् पुंसः सङ्गस्तेषोपजायते सङ्गात् भवति कामः कामात् क्रोधोऽभिजायते क्रोधात् भवति सम्मोहः सम्मोहात् स्मृतिविभ्रमः स्मृतिभ्रंशात् बुद्धिनाशः बुद्धिनाशात् प्रणश्यति. So basically, it talks about how a human being gets caught in the cycle of thoughts in an infinite loop and he is not able to come out of it. So here we can take an example. We can take an example of anything, like a person who has lost his close relative or mother or father. So what will happen is that dhyayato vishayan pumsaha, when he starts thinking about that object, or in the modern sense, if you want to give an example to the to our youngsters, we can take the example of love. So if two persons are in love, then something happens, some breakup happens. Let's take the example of either boy or a girl, someone. Then what will happen? They start thinking about those things. They start thinking, why did this happen? So what will happen? Dhyayato vishayan pumsaha. When you start thinking about that, you will form association with it. Sangaste shopajayate. You will start associating. Why did this happen? We were so close. So what happened? So you start thinking about it. Then Sangat bhavati kamaha. Then you will start having desires. Oh, it could have been like that. It could have been like this. We could have lived like that. Like this, it goes on. Desire starts on developing. Kamat krodho vijayate. When you realize that it is not possible, then different kinds of emotions arise. And out of that, the most dangerous one is anger. You will start getting angry. Then krodhat bhavati sammoha. Because of anger and uncontrolled emotions, you will have infatuation towards that thing. So you'll have infatuation. You'll do the sort of things that you would never have imagined that you will do. Sammoha smriti vibhramaha. You will forget who you are. You will forget your present karma. You'll forget what you ought to do. You'll forget who the person is in front of you. You'll forget everything. Memory loss. Smriti vibhramaha means smriti bramshat buddhi nashaha. And when you lose that memory thing, then buddhi nasha, there is destruction of intellect. You will do all nonsense things. Basically, you don't have the connection with the neurotransmitters of your brain. You are not unable to recognize what you are doing. So there is a blockage for the brain. There are certain neurotransmitter which block the signals in the brain. So there is a blockage in the brain, and because of this, you're not able to think properly. And when you're not able to think properly, everything is destroyed. Buddhinashat pranashyati. Everything is destroyed. That's how a person gets locked in this infinite cycle of thinking loop.
So he's caught up in his own emotions, and the clarity of thinking is lost.
Yes, clarity of thinking is lost, and it's gone. Everything is gone. So there is no meaning for his actions. There is no meaning for his speech. He doesn't know what he is doing. He forgets everything. So this is about emotional culture. And then also we have certain kind of prejudices. So since we are brought up in a particular society, we are socialized in such a manner that we are made to think that this is correct, this is wrong, this is absolutely right, this is absolutely wrong. We have norms, mores, and taboos in the society. So because of these norms, mores, and taboos, we start developing a kind of prejudices in our mind. That is prejudgment, without actually experiencing or without going into the depth or having the knowledge about it. We judge something. That is prejudice. And this prejudice, what will it do? It will make the mind rigid, and it will create a lot of insecurities. And in today's world, there is a lot of comparison and competition, and the competition is unhealthy competition. So in yoga, the concept of competition with others is a void structure. It doesn't have any meaning, because yoga is something which you do it for yourself. You compare it with yourself. It is for you. You are the one who will do it. You have to compare it with yourself. So you have to compare whether you are doing better than previous day. Are you better tomorrow than compared to previous day? So this is the path of swadhyaya. That means you have to go on self-studying. So this is about manomaya kosha. And then we have this pranamaya kosha. So in pranamaya kosha, imbalances in pranamaya kosha is dealt with pranayama. So pranayama is defined as swasa praswasa gati vichedate iti pranayamaha. That means shwasa means inhalation, prashwasa means exhalation, gati means speed, vicheda means cutting down. So basically it is cutting down the speed of inhalation and exhalation is pranayama. And before doing pranayama also, we have certain cleansing mechanisms. That is, we have vibhagiya pranayama, that is sectional breathing. So we have three types of sectional breathing: the abdominal breathing, the thoracic breathing, and the clavicular breathing. And then we have dog breathing. And then we have kapalabhati. Kapalabhati, kapala means head or the facial head region. Then bhati means shining. So shining of the facial head region because of the gush of the flow of blood into the brain. Yes, of course, all these practices have to be done under supervisions because it has contradictions. So if someone has a very high BP, the normal BP is considered as 120/80 systolic and diastolic pressure. So if someone has 180/90 or 180/100, then that person is considered to have high BP. So people having with high BP have to be very cautious in doing this dog breathing or kapalabhati, because it increases the blood pressure, it increases the temperature and metabolism of the body. So we don't know what will happen to them if there is sudden increase in blood pressure. So always it's better to take an expert's advice or learn properly and then do it. So this is about pranayama. And prana is coterminous with the term chi, which is used in Chinese, or it is called as the life force. So basically, by controlling the breath, you are controlling the speed of the thoughts. And by controlling the speed of the thoughts, you are exerting an external control over the mind to calm down. So this is pranamaya kosha. And then in yogic terminology or yogic science, we have totally 72,000 nadis. Nadi is nadi is derived from the word nad, which means to flow through the channels. So basically there are 72,000 channels in the body, and out of that, 3 are major. That is Ida, Pingala, and Sushumna. Ida is connected to the left nostril, and it deals with the parasympathetic nervous system. Pingala is connected to the right nostril. It deals with the sympathetic nervous system. And Ida is, if you do anything with any pranayama centered around Ida, then it is called as cooling pranayama. If you do anything centered around Pingala, then it is called as heating pranayama. So Ida is named as Chandra, and Pingala is named as Surya. As the name suggests, Chandra is for cooling and Surya is for heating up of the body. So we have different pranayamas based on different nostrils. So we have Chandranuloma Viloma Pranayama, Suryanuloma Viloma Pranayama, Chandrabedana Pranayama, Suryabedana Pranayama. So like this, it is based upon the nostril. And then apart from this, we have the other different types of pranayama also. We have Ujjayi Pranayama. Ujjayi Pranayama is basically, you will concentrate the breath at the throat region. It is for pointed awareness. This is a point and you are aware at that point. So that's why it's called pointed awareness. So the breath is concentrated in this portion and a sound is made in the throat. It goes like this. So actually the sound is not coming from my mouth. I'm making the sound from the throat. So this is Ujjayi. Yeah, this is Ujjayi Pranayama. And then we have Shitali Pranayama. Shitali Pranayama, you make the tongue in the shape of a tube. You inhale through the mouth and slowly exhale through the nose. Actually, when you inhale, you can feel the coolness of the air. So it is called a cooling pranayama. And then you have Shitkari Pranayama. In Shitkari, you roll up the tongue and touch the tip of the tongue to the upper palate of the mouth. Then we have Sadanta Pranayama. That means through the crevices of the teeth, you will inhale. It goes like this. So all these are cooling pranayamas. And then we have finally Brahmari Pranayama. So Brahmari, so we have to make the sound of a B. So you will make a sound like this. It goes like this. So this pranayama is for having three-dimensional awareness of the body.
Like, what are those three dimensions? Could you please break it down?
It's not like three dimensions means the awareness at the physical level from all the angles. So you will be able to feel the vibrations of the pranayama while doing this. And also there is one extreme step you can do in this pranayama. You can close your ears and do this Brahmari Pranayama. The effect will be much more. What will happen is that when you close the ears, the sound starts reverberating in the mind itself. It doesn't go out. So it will be much more effective. So three-dimensional awareness means you will be aware of each and everything of your surroundings. After doing this pranayama, maybe for around 5 times or 6 times, then you will start feeling, you will start hearing the subtle sounds that are present in the environment. So three-dimensional awareness is something which you're aware of the environment around you. So
to also add to this, people will suggest this Brahmari Pranayama if they have migraine pain, because when I have migraine problems a lot. So when I started doing this pranayama, it gradually reduced and I don't see headache at all. It rarely comes. And that previous years and all, I used to suffer. Headache was my chronic disease, but now it has been reduced because of pranayama, Brahmari Pranayama.
Brahmari Pranayama.
Yes. Apart from headache, also what I have experienced is, I can see gradual increase in my memory power, where then I actually remember a lot of things after doing pranayama, to add to the points you have said, sir.
Okay. So basically pranayama is nothing but you are increasing the blood flow. You are increasing the blood flow to the brain. So what you are doing is you are giving more energy to the brain to get activated, and it is in a direction. It is in a particular direction. It's not like you are leaving the mind free to act like a monkey. So you are actually controlling the mind through the prana. So when you are providing more amount of energy, basically what is happening, you are working out the brain. It's just like working out any other muscle. When you go to the gym and start working out, the muscles start expanding. Similarly, the brain
Mm,
also starts expanding when you do some cognitive thinking, or solve some arithmetic problems, or do some
mm,
computations, or solve
mm,
some puzzle, or do this pranayama. You're actually activating the
mm,
brain. So because of this
mm,
activation, there is
mm.
expansion of this synopsis. Okay,
Okay.
so between the neurons we have something called as synopsis. So when
Mm,
this synopsis expands, then there
mm,
is development of intellect and also
mm.
memory. After pranamaya kosha we have vijnanamaya kosha.
Okay,
So
what's that?
yeah, vijnanamaya kosha is this notional correction about what is
Mm-hmm.
happiness. So
Mm-hmm.
what is your favorite dessert or sweet or dish?
Jamun anytime.
Okay. So when you eat that jamun for the first time, okay, so you will
Mm,
feel that rasa of that jamun. Okay, it will be
mm,
going
mm,
into your mouth. The salivary glands will produce the saliva, and you can feel the
mm.
jamun going through the throat, and you'll feel happy.
True, true.
The same
Mm,
jamun, when you start consuming more and more, when it becomes two,
mm,
three, four, five, and depending upon the person's
mm,
capacity, so what will happen is
mm,
that going on further, you will not have that experience which you had in the first time. So
mm,
what is happening
mm,
is the happiness is actually slowly, gradually reducing. So this
mm,
is
mm,
the
mm,
problem with materialistic happiness. The thing is that
mm,
we
mm,
are not satisfied at any moment. Where is satisfaction?
mm,
If we have one thing, we
mm,
want the other thing. We will never be satisfied. So
mm,
when we are not contented and satisfied in our life, how can we
mm,
expect ourselves to be happy? So
mm, mm,
notional correction is that we have to
mm,
realize that happiness is there in materialistic items, but it is temporary. It is not a permanent
mm,
happiness. Then
mm,
realizing what is the absolute truth in this world,
mm,
notional correction. So what is
mm,
this absolute truth? Is there something called as absolute truth? Truth is always
mm,
relative. It is truth
mm,
is truth only to a particular place, a particular region,
mm,
to that particular time
mm,
period, and to that particular
mm,
person. For example, we
mm,
had this monarchy being the rule of the day during
mm,
previous ancient times. Today we have
mm,
democracy. Like this, the rules keeps on
mm,
changing, and each and every
mm,
society will have their own norms, more taboos, and everything. So which is correct, which is wrong, we don't know. So
mm,
there is no actual concept of absolute truth. It is always relative. And
mm,
yoga is not only flexibility
mm,
about the body, but also flexibility about the
mm,
mind.
mm.
So this is
True,
about
true.
Vijnanamaya Kosha. And then
Mm,
we have this Anandamaya Kosha, that is the blissful field. Here
mm,
we have to find bliss in the karma or the action that we perform. So we have this famous line in Bhagavad Gita, Karmanyavadikaraste mafaleshu kadachana ma karma phala heturboho mate sangosta karmani. That means you have only the right to do the karma, never on the fruits of the action. And while doing the karma, you mate sangosta karmani. You should not form an association with the karma. You have to do it with vairagya. So, for example, if you prepare some dish, then you think that you have prepared that dish, so you are the controlling factor and you are responsible. You alone are responsible for that karma, and you expect your karma to be perfect, to for the dish to be perfectly tasteful. But sometimes the taste will vary, and you think that it is solely dependent upon you, but it is not true. The ingredients, from where the ingredients came, where did it grow, what kind of soil it grew, what kind of rainfall it received, and all these things, from how it was processed and how it came to your plate, everything matters. And finally, the perception of the eater also matters. The eater will have a different perception of taste. One person might like spicy, one person might like sour, something like that. So the perception also differs. So how can you think that the karma or the action that you do is only dependent upon you? That is false. It's not true. So this is about, and when you realize this, you start doing karma with a very sincere attitude. And in that, while doing that karma, you start feeling the bliss in karma. So this is about Anandamaya Kosha. And then to explain about the broad classification of yoga, it is divided into four parts. That is Karma Yoga, Raja Yoga, Gnana Yoga, and Bhakti Yoga. So this Karma Yoga, as I have told, it deals with the tamas, rajas, and sattva, and deals with the karma or the action. So Sri Krishna describes that if any person is feeling lazy or tamasic in nature, then make him perform rajasic activity and bring him to rajasic state where the energy spending is more. After he comes to rajasic state, pull him down slowly towards the sattvika guna. So this is about Karma Yoga. Then we have Raja Yoga, the path of willpower or the mind. You form certain disciplines and you start following that discipline. So you will express the power of your mind. And then we have Gnana Yoga. So this Gnana Yoga basically deals with three things: Shravana, Manana, and Nididhyasana. Shravana means listening to the right knowledge. Manana means understanding the right knowledge. And Nididhyasana, practicing it, practicing the right knowledge. Bhakti Yoga, we have concepts of Kama, Prema, and Bhakti. So Kama is desire. Prema is desire plus sacrifice. Bhakti is desire plus sacrifice plus complete surrender. And you have this example of Meera, who had completely immersed herself in the worship of Krishna. So even if Krishna accepts her or not, it doesn't matter to her because she's everything as Krishna. For her, everything is Krishna Maya. So this is about Bhakti.
Which means she gradually surrendered herself to Sri Krishna, Lord Krishna.
She completely surrendered herself. And you might have seen people who are singing the hymns or bhajans. They would go into tears. They will burst into tears. Tears just flow down their cheeks. And these tears is Ananda Pashpa. So it is because of the bliss they have merged with that infinity and they have lost themselves. So this is about Bhakti Yoga. And then again, Patanjali Yoga is being divided into 8 steps. That is Yama, Niyama, Asana, Pranayama, Pratyahara, Dharana, Dhyana, Samadhi. Now, instead of going into the depth of the details of these, I'll just briefly explain what it is and the overall meaning why it has framed in such a way.
Okay.
So, Yama is public disciplines like Ahimsa, then Satya, Asteya, Aparigraha, Brahmacharya. Then we have Niyama, that is Shaucha, Santosha, then Tapas, Swadhyaya, and then Ishvara Pranidhanadva. And then Asana. Now, coming into the concept of Asana, this is the most misunderstood concept today. So, people think that Asana is yoga. It is not true. Asana is a limb, it's a part of yoga. And coming to the meaning of asana, I just want to tell a snippet by our Kanakadasa. ಏಸು ಕಾಯಂಗಾಳ ಕಳೆದು 84 ಲಕ್ಷ ಜೀವ ರಾಶಿಯನ್ನು ದಾಟಿ ಬಂದ ಈ ಶರೀರ. So when we observe the words 84 ಲಕ್ಷ ಜೀವ ರಾಶಿ, that means 84 lakh live forms. So basically we have 84 lakh asanas.
So nice.
Yeah, so basically it's nothing but asanas are inspired from the nature, from the living creatures. So asana means, example, asana basically means posture. So example is that we have this vrikshasana. Vriksha means kalpa vriksha. It's a tree which has a strong base and which has this attitude of giving. So it gives fruit, shelter, and flowers to others without having any expectation in return. So while doing the asana, we have to imbibe those characteristics actually. One more example is Veerabhadrasana. Veerabhadra. Who is Veerabhadra? It's actually attributed to Shiva. But Shiva in a warrior form is Veerabhadra. So while doing that Veerabhadrasana, you have to imbibe the characteristics of a warrior. What are the characteristics of a warrior? Agility, strength, power. So all these characteristics have to be imbibed. So while doing asana, we have to imbibe these characteristics. So yama, niyama, asana. After asana, we do pranayama. Pranayama is for regulating the flow of breath, as I told earlier. So after pranayama, then we have dharana. Dharana is focusing on different parts of the body. Concentration is the main aspect of dharana. Dhyana is defocusing. That means concentration without any effort. And then finally we have samadhi. So samadhi is compared to a quantum jump. So quantum jump is nothing but when an electron jumps to the next higher orbit. So similarly, samadhi is considered as when a human jumps to the next higher level. So, and the samadhi is considered as the first step towards the path of spirituality. And we have 8 different types of samadhi, and I'm not qualified to talk about it, so I'll stop with samadhi here.
Okay, thank you so much for making us run through all the 8 steps in briefly so that we could understand and do yoga. Whenever I used to do yoga, it was just like a physical form of doing yoga. I never thought that, okay, doing vrikshasana, I'll have to imbibe the characteristics of the tree. No, I didn't know that unless I heard it from you. So I'll be doing that from today.
Yeah, and there is a reason for why the steps are arranged in this manner. So basically, I talked about gunas, right? Some people will have tamasic guna. So in order to counter that, you need some kind of rapid exercise. So which consists of speed. So to bring the tamasic nature to the rajasic nature. And then here again, we have 2 schools, Patanjali school, and also we have Hatha school, Hatha Yoga school. So Hatha Yoga school focuses more on speed, rapidity, jerk, and spending more amount of energy. And in Patanjali school, it focuses more on relaxing the body, staying in the asana for a longer period of time. Both schools are required. Both have their own advantages. So Hatha school is basically used to bring the person from tamasic state to rajasic state, and also it is used on persons who are very obese and lethargic, so that they become active. And Patanjali school is used on rajasic people who are hyperactive to bring them to a slow state of calmness.
Okay, that's really nice way of giving a broad concepts of 2 different school of principles talking about yoga. But in today's generation, yoga, I think it has been commercialized. People have been modified their style and all, but still when it comes to yoga, they're mainly concentrating on physical attributes rather than the mind peacefulness. So what's your opinion on that?
Yeah, this is a very big concept today, commercialization of yoga. Rather than a concept, it's an issue. So see, commercialization to a certain extent, okay, it's fine, it's beneficial. That means it gives the practitioners the advantages of practicing the yoga, while it gives a form of livelihood for the people who teach them. But when the actual root and the meaning of the yoga is changed, then it won't be yoga at all. So I have heard this commercialization of yoga in different forms. We have this nude yoga, beer yoga, sheep yoga, and such other things. Now, if we take an example of this beer yoga, beer is an intoxicating drink. The actual definition of yoga is joining the body and the mind. When you intoxicate your mind, how will you connect with your body? There's no connection between the body and the mind. And the root of the yoga definition itself is changed. If you want to do that, do it. We have no problem. But don't call it yoga. It's not yoga. You call it beer exercise if you want. Fine, no problem for us. But it's not at all yoga. So please don't commercialize in this manner. Yes, modifications are allowed because each and every individual's physiological and psychological makeup is different. Hence, modifications are necessary, but that should not change the actual root and meaning of yoga.
Correct. Also, I have heard that few countries have banned yoga. Like, if you say Russia or Canada, Malaysia, they have banned yoga. What is your opinion on that? Why did they ban?
Yeah, actually, even I didn't know. So when I searched in internet, I got shocked that some country has banned yoga. So when I went through some of the details, I found out that they were very apprehensive that yoga is a form or a cult to spread Hinduism. So they were afraid that yoga might affect their religious beliefs. Yoga might affect their religion. Yoga might affect the overall lifestyle and culture of that region. But what I would like to tell is that yoga is for everyone. It does not depend upon any region, religion, caste, sex, or place of birth. Why is this? Because we have this ancient saying, ancient Subhashita saying in Sanskrit. Ayam nijaha paro veti gananam laguchetasam udara charitanam tu vasudaiva kutumbakam. That means classifying this as mine, this as not mine. This is my religion, this is not my religion. This is my culture, this is not my culture. This is my people, these are not my people. So classifying this is an characteristic of people who have narrow-mindedness. Whereas people with a broad mind tell that the whole world is my family. That is Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. That means the whole world is my family. So I would like to tell that if they are banning yoga because of some unsupported reasons, okay, unsupported fears, then it is time for them to reflect it. Because yoga is for everyone and it is not some kind of cult. It is a kind of lifestyle which helps and benefits people. It is practical. So if the countries are banning them, in my opinion, they are just missing out all the benefits of yoga.
True, yoga is just for keeping our mind and body healthy. I think all the countries, those who have banned, should reconsider on it and make their people give an opportunity for healthy lifestyle.
Yeah, correct.
No doubt yoga is carried from the ancient time and we have been carrying it now also. So how do you want our future generation to see or change, contribute to the yoga?
Yeah, see, as I told, in Ashtanga Yoga, there are two types of yoga, Bahiranga Yoga and Antaranga Yoga. Yama, Niyama, Asana, Pranayama and Pratyahara are considered as Bahiranga Yoga because you control the mind from external agents. That is the reason they are called as Bahiranga Yoga. Whereas Dharana, Dhyana and Samadhi, it's called as Antaranga Yoga because you have direct control from internal, from within you have control. That's why it's called internal yoga. So what is happening is that people are focusing more on the physical attributes of yoga, the asana of yoga. So they are getting mesmerized with the Bahiranga Yoga. Fine, do the Bahiranga Yoga, but do not get stuck in that. You have to move forward. See, in order to get the benefits of yoga as a holistic science, you have to just not stay in Bahiranga Yoga, but move from Bahiranga to Antaranga and explore the subtleties of yoga.
Well, you gave a proper, clear definition of Bahiranga and Antaranga Yoga, and future generation should follow both the aspects. But let me tell you that Bahiranga Yoga is more important to attain Antaranga Yoga unless you gain control over physical body. You cannot control your mind because mind is more versatile than the body. So what is your opinion on that?
Yeah, very true. So actually it is very true that we have to gain control over the body first. So Patanjali describes the concepts of achieving this yoga sadhana in a sutra like this. So there are different types of adachades. That means obstacles that come in the way of seeing clearly who you are yourself. So he describes this in a sutra. I'll just recite the sutra. Vyadisthana samshaya pramadalasya virati bhranti darshana alabdha bhumikatvan avasti tatvani chitta vikshepaste antarayaha. So that means there are 9 types of obstacles that come and block in the path of yoga sadhana or any sadhana if you want you take for that matter. So those are vyadi, that means physical disease. So what you told, that concept, physical, if you have a physical disease, obviously you can't control the physical nature, correct, right? You have to have the balance in the Annamaya Kosha, then only you can go to the next levels, Pranamaya, Manomaya, Vijnanamaya and Anandamaya. So he describes after Vyadi, we have this Sthyana, that is mental laziness. Then Samshaya, we have this Samshaya, that is doubtfulness. What is correct, what is wrong? We don't have that proper knowledge. Then Pramada, Pramada means ignorance. Alasya, physical laziness. Avirati, not having vairagya over the fruits of the action. Pranti darshana,
Mhm.
that means hallucinating. That object is not present in the real world, but you are hallucinating, imagining things. Alabdha bhumikatva,
Mhm.
that means you are trying for something very hard, but it is not that the fruits are not acquiring. So you are trying
Mhm.
very hard, but you are not able to achieve it. So that is a kind of
Mhm.
adachade. And
Mhm.
anavastitatva, that is
Mhm.
unsteadiness of the mind. So all these
Mhm.
9 adachades are the ones which
Mhm.
come in the path of any sadhana, not only yoga sadhana. You can apply it to general
Mhm.
things. So any sadhana,
Mhm.
for that matter, you take, these are the 9 adachades that Patanjali mentions. So as you told,
Mhm.
body, maintaining the physical strength is very important, because
Mhm.
in order to go to the
Mhm.
next level, that is pranamaya kosha, physics is very
Mhm.
important. And we have
Mhm.
this famous saying called as how the body, ideal body should be. Vajradapi
Mhm.
kathorani mruduni kusumani cha. That means the
Mhm.
body should acquire the shape and tenacity of a diamond when the
Mhm.
situation requires it. And when
Mhm.
the situation is calm, when it is normal, the body should be
Mhm.
flexible and just like a flower. This is because,
Mhm.
see, normal times you don't require to spend too much energy. So if you keep all the
Mhm.
body parts tight, it's unnecessary wastage of
Mhm.
energy. It's not required. So whenever you
Mhm.
require it, use the energy. Whenever it is not required, preserve the energy. That's the concept of yoga.
Mhm. That was really beautiful way of explaining two extremes to be inculcated in a human body, making a body as good, as hard as diamond, as also as light as flower. That was really nice. So you made us run through the all roots of yoga, right from the origin and broader concepts, and how yoga is helpful to have a healthy lifestyle for a person to carry on. So from this, I'm sure our audiences and me, as me personally, learned that true yoga is not about the shape of our body, but the shape of our life. Yoga is not to
Very
be
true.
performed, but to be lived. Yoga
Hmm.
does not care about what you have been, but it cares about what we are as a person becoming. So, thank you, Shri Roop, for making us run through all the roots of yoga.
Yeah, let us conclude it with a Shanti mantra.
Yes, sir.
ॐ सर्वे भवन्तु सुखिनः, सर्वे सन्तु निरामया, सर्वे भद्राणि पश्यन्तु, मा कश्चित् दुःखभाग् भवेत्. ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः.